love you, Cleveland. And I love you, Ohio. And a very happy new year, a belated Merry Christmas to you all. As you can see, I am not in our studio in downtown Cleveland. I am in Marathon, Florida with my beloved wife, Jacqueline. We are in a condo here. And so we will be conducting the show via Zoom for the next few months, as we will be in Marathon here for a couple of weeks, and then we're moving up to Cape Coral, as we did last year if you were with us at that time. Again, I want to welcome you to this week's version of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. I'm Bruce Drennan, along with Ryan Smith, my producer. Happy New Year to you, partner.
Happy New Year, Bruce. I'm glad you made it to Florida safe. That's always good to see. I hope the weather is a lot more nice for you than it is here in Cleveland. Very dreary, rainy day as we get headed for some good college football games.
Oh, you're not kidding. Speaking of safety, I think it's only appropriate that we acknowledge the tragedy in New Orleans of this terrible act of violence that has taken the lives of, I believe as of this recording, 10 people and 30-some injured. A tragedy, especially in light that this evening, we're recording here on New Year's Day morning, that this evening the Sugar Bowl will be staged, the last of the four playoff games here from last night, New Year's Eve, and the three today between Georgia and Notre Dame. It's a tragic thing, Ryan, and our hearts go out to those families that are affected.
Absolutely. I saw the news this morning, really just 20 minutes ago, actually, was the first time I saw it. Really, it's just another senseless act of violence that has become all too common here in the climate we live in America, really.
Yeah, terrible, terrible. All right, well, we're going to try to put a lighter note on this week's show. And we weren't with you last week for Christmas, but we've got a lot of catching up to do. And I figure what better way to catch up than to talk about the Cleveland teams and some of the events from 2024, which we just completed now that we have entered 2025. The Cleveland Guardians I'll start with in the first of the divisional championship for the Guardians. A fun team to watch this last season, that's for sure. And considering Shane Bieber got hurt, unbelievable. First round bye, winning the division, and then winning against the Detroit Tigers in 5 games in that round, losing to the New York Yankees in 5. And, of course, the LA Dodgers defeated the Yankees in the World Series. But a great year for the Guardians, Ryan, and looking forward already to this coming season in 25.
Yeah, last year, nobody really had the expectations of a championship series for the Guardians. Rookie manager and Stephen Vogt, obviously well-deserved, got that award, and the future's bright. And I understand it's tough to compete with these big market teams, but that's the reality, and the Guardians do it better than anybody else. And we just hope that one day, they'll do it well enough to finally go ahead and break that long, long World Series drought.
And to the Cavaliers we go, where they, of course, qualified for the playoffs and won their first-round matchup in 7 games against Orlando, a physical series, only to be defeated and have the season come to an end in the conference semifinals against the eventual NBA champion Boston Celtics. But then again, this year, look at this team. Who would have dreamed they would be coming off last season the way it ended and starting off as clearly the best team in the entire NBA?
Yeah, I got to give all the credit in the world and continue to do so to Kobe Altman, because like many people and myself included, I didn't think running back the core 4 was enough. I didn't think that a head coach change would make all the difference, but Kenny Atkinson has put the money where his mouth is, and he's done everything great, and now we're reaping the fruits of the labor. Best start so far through this many games in franchise history, Bruce, and it's hard not to envision the Cavaliers at least in the Eastern Conference Finals, but at this point, Bruce, I think a finals run is a realistic expectation for this group.
Who would have thought so? The favorites to certainly win the East, no question about it. To the Browns we go, unfortunately. But last year turned out to be a very good season because of Joe Flacco. Even with Watson going down as he did, Flacco saved the day, and the Browns qualified for the playoffs. But what a disappointing performance against Houston with Stroud, the former Ohio State quarterback, losing 45-14. And, of course, the eventual Super Bowl was won by Kansas City 2 years in a row. They're going for a three-peat this year.
Yeah, it's crazy, Bruce. In just one season, how much has changed. The year before this, obviously, you went 4-4 at the awards. Kevin Stefanski, head coach of the year. Jim Schwartz, assistant. Miles Depoy, Joe Flacco, comeback player of the year, coming off his couch, hopping on a plane to Berea and getting that starting role. Just an incredible season, and obviously that gets watered down with this season. But I guess, if anything, it can only go up from here. Fingers crossed, that is.
In golf, the Masters was won by Scotty Scheffler, the player of the year. Xander Schauffele won the PGA. Bryson DeChambeau won the U.S. Open, and Schauffele winning the British Open. Scheffler was declared the player of the year, but in my book, it was Schauffele because he won 2 majors. So we shall see what happens this year. Although, isn't it ironic that Scheffler's already on the DL, if you will, by cutting himself with a knife, preparing a meal on Christmas Day, Ryan?
Well, if that man can overcome getting arrested and still winning, I think he's going to be all right from a little finger injury. Man, what a story that was. That was an incredible time, and I was glad we were able to talk about that, Bruce.
Well, let's shift to the Browns, where the Browns and Deshaun Watson have agreed to a contract restructuring, so they lessen the cap charge in future years. And while keeping his fully guaranteed $92 million contract intact, it adds a new year to the existing contract with no new money. But this helps the Browns at least field a more competitive roster for 2025. And that brings us to Myles Garrett and Joel Bitonio, who spoke out about just that. And why not? Veterans as they are, the clock is ticking, so to speak, for both of these great players, and they want to play on a championship team before their careers come to an end. Both quarterbacks, however, that are here for the draft, that are going to be available to the Browns in the draft, Ward of Miami and Sanders of Colorado, are projected to be picked before the Browns, who are likely going to be 4, maybe 5. One of those guys may fall to the Browns, but Watson will not likely be ready to start the 25 season. So what do you go after a free agent like Sam Darnold, Russell Wilson? I doubt if that's in the cards for the Browns, but it's a dilemma. And as I projected when they made this Watson deal, which I advocated, however, if it fails, and it appears it's failing, there's still time to rectify it, I guess. It's all up to Watson. But if it fails, it's going to set this franchise back at least 5 years. And here we are with the reality of that.
Yeah, the Browns have multiple options they can go down in terms of what they're going to do for their quarterback next season. But at the end of the day, I think it's pretty clear right now that starting quarterback is not on the Browns right now. And the restructure for Deshaun, I think a lot of people that didn't understand the optics of why they restructured it were worried that that signified Deshaun Watson would continue to be our QB1. But in reality, that's the route they had to go down because of the guaranteed money, because of the years on the contract. So yes, Deshaun Watson will be on the team next season, but I think if anything, that restructure signifies they plan on cutting him before the 2026 season.
Well, the Browns coming off a loss to Miami 20-3. We were able to see that game obviously down here in Florida because in the Florida Keys, that's part of the Miami market. So we got the feed, and boy, was I glad to get that feed considering the great performance that our team gave us here in the second to last game of the season. I promise I wouldn't lie in my New Year's resolution, but here I am breaking that already. The Browns are last in the NFL on third down conversions. What does that tell you? And how about Huntley, formerly of the Browns, coming back and getting some revenge? I've always believed big time in revenge in football because it's such an emotional game, but big time motivation for coaches as well. And how about at the end of the game? I had an observation. I wrote it down here for the show today, Ryan. Dorsey at the end of the game putting his hand on his head in frustration. And doesn't he know how to wear a cap? His cap was here and his hair was hanging down here. He looked like a character on Saturday Night Live or even the Three Stooges. Sorry to say.
Hey, well, that makes sense because the Brown season has certainly been a comedy if we're going to put it into a genre. So no surprise there. And, well, if Ken Dorsey has a headache, well, now he just joins the millions of Browns fans in the world that had to suffer throughout this insufferable season, and plenty of migraines came throughout these 17 weeks.
Let's get to the rest of the NFL, where on Christmas Day, we saw Kansas City do a job on Pittsburgh. I enjoyed that, watching that game very much, 29-10. And it just goes to show, like I have said for years, we're in an era of professional football where great offense will beat great defense every day, every time. And that's because of the rules and the structure of the rules in the pro game. Baltimore doing a job on Houston. Boy, did they ever, 31-2. And I'm very glad, because Stroud, for the playing of the national anthem, couldn't bring himself to take his stocking cap off. And he also had his hands in his pockets like he was totally bored. And then you think of something that happens today in New Orleans, and it just galls me when athletes making political statements are not showing the proper respect, if you will. Baltimore wins the division with a win against Cleveland. What do you think the odds are that that's not going to happen? And Pittsburgh wins the division with a win against Cincinnati and a Baltimore loss. Ryan?
Well, I would say I was pretty bored watching the Texans offense, if that's what you want to call it, go out there scoring 2 points. Baltimore, great win for them. Lamar put himself potentially in the MVP conversation. That's going to really come down to the last week. And now I think they're going to win the AFC North. Bruce, you were right. I was wrong. That won't be the first time there. But it'll be interesting. It's all going to come down to Lamar in the playoffs, because that's what matters, and that's what's going to define his legacy really here as he continues his NFL career.
By the way, LeBron James felt compelled to lecture us that Christmas Day is the NBA day. And why is that? I don't know. But he was upset that the NFL had a couple of games, very attractive games, that's for sure. I'm glad the NFL featured two great matchups on Christmas Day. Blowouts, yes, but great matchups nonetheless. They were aired on Netflix, which tells you that we're heading more and more for pay-per-view, if you will, in football and basketball too. If indeed the ratings play out, because the ratings for those NBA games were very, very good. But here we go. All right, now, that was Christmas Day. Cincinnati defeated Denver 30-24, so Denver needs to beat Kansas City, who will be sitting their regulars in that last game. And Cincinnati needs Kansas City to beat Denver, so we'll see what happens there. Tampa Bay defeated Carolina 48-14. Mayfield, oh my goodness gracious. You admitted you were wrong. I've been admitting that maybe I'm wrong. My original statement about Mayfield is that he wasn't going to win us a Super Bowl. We'll see if he can do that with Tampa. I don't think he will, but we'll see. The Bucs win the AFC South with a win over New Orleans, which is going to happen. Washington defeated Atlanta 30-24. Thus, the Commanders clinched the playoffs, and the Falcons win the division with a win against Carolina, and Tampa Bay lost to New Orleans. So looks like Mayfield's in again. LA Rams, a 13-9 winner over Arizona, and the Rams clinch the playoffs. Not an easy out. Watch out for the Rams. They're not going to be an easy out. And Minnesota defeated Green Bay 27-13, and the Vikings now versus Detroit this final weekend for the divisional crown. Anything there?
I'm glad to see that Cincinnati, I don't think will be making the playoffs. I expect Denver to go ahead and beat Kansas City. And for this Browns game coming up, 17.5 point spread. Wow, that might be the biggest spread this season yet, but it doesn't surprise me. The Browns are going to go out on a sad note, but that's just how the season has played out, Bruce.
Let's just hope they cover and don't get embarrassed again, as they have been so many times this season. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll dive into these college bowl games and the playoffs. Bonus time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Again, Happy New Year to you. Bonus time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Bruce Drennan, Ryan Smith coming your way from Marathon, Florida and the Keys. Let's dive into these bowl games. And starting off with the New Year's Eve playoff matchup between Penn State and Boise State. Now, Penn State got here with a very convincing win over SMU, 38-10. And now, as an 11.5 point favorite over Boise State, they advance with their big victory last night. They've, in my opinion, we've talked about this, Ryan, they've got to change the seeding process with this new 12-team format. Boise State is the number 3 seed. And here Penn State makes Penn State as much as a 13.5-point favorite. The number actually got that high, and they still covered. So Boise, it got a bye. How unfair was that, especially to a team like Notre Dame?
Yeah, it's very unfair, and it just shows the flaws that this new system has because, as you mentioned, Penn State, obviously an easy win in the first round, and then you play Boise State, who had no business getting the bye, and as of recording this, Arizona State got the other bye. Of course, that's not deserving. We'll see how that Texas game plays out. I don't expect that to be close, but you penalize Oregon, the best team all year, undefeated. They have the hardest second-round matchup in Ohio State coming up later today, Bruce. So a lot of flaws that they're going to have to fix, but I don't think they're easy fixes.
Well, and as of the recording, the Arizona State-Texas game has not yet begun, but it will be kicked off by the time you see this version of Bonus Time with Drennan. Speaking of Texas, of course, they defeated Clemson 38-24, and they are a 12.5 to as much as a 13.5-point favorite over Arizona State, who got the bye. That's the Peach Bowl. That's the first game today of the playoffs. And then, of course, the Rose Bowl at 5 o'clock, kind of traditional, the old Pac-8, Pac-10, Pac-12, if you will, against the Big Ten, Ohio State and Oregon, even though Oregon now is in the Big Ten. But Ohio State, I got to tell you, was incredibly impressive. And we weren't on the air last week, so we didn't comment about these games. But that win over Tennessee really has changed some of the opinion, I think, of the faithful about Ryan Day. And as a matter of fact, Vegas is convinced because they've made Ohio State a 2-point favorite, maybe 2.5-point favorite over the undefeated Oregon Ducks, the number one team in the country.
Yeah, I mean, they completely outclassed Tennessee in the horseshoe. I think that was really Will Howard's best game all season, and if that's a good sign for the Buckeyes that he's playing his best ball right now, they got a good shot against beating Oregon, but you know Will Howard's going to have to be on his game today. The game plan is going to have to be throw to your receivers like they didn't against Michigan, and I'm thinking to beat Oregon, Bruce, maybe they got to score at least 30 points here.
Yeah, and they did the first time around, and obviously the way the game ended, another 10 seconds or so and Ohio State wins the game. So that's going to be a great matchup. We'll see what it's going to be like tonight for the Sugar Bowl because of this tragedy with the violent killing with this truck. Notre Dame coming off a very impressive win over Indiana. The score doesn't indicate how the Irish dominated that game in South Bend. They take on Georgia, who will not have Carson Beck as their quarterback. The backup is a better runner, and Georgia is a 1-point favorite according to Vegas in this big matchup. This is a dandy matchup that could go either way. I don't know how to call this one, Ryan.
It's been decades, Bruce, decades since Notre Dame has won a New Year's Six Bowl. Georgia obviously has the more recent success. And I honestly believe, Bruce, from watching Carson Beck this season, I almost like their chances more with Gunnar Stockton at the helm. We've seen this before in college football where a backup comes in, he has immediate success. And hell, I know this was a while ago, but go look at Ohio State the first year of the playoff. You watched Cardell Jones launch that team, and they won the Natty. You watched Tua come in for Jalen Hurts. I mean, it's a theme you see in college ball more often than not, and I really believe Georgia has a better shot with Gunnar Stockton than they ever did with Carson Beck.
Yeah. Now, these are non-playoff games I'm going to touch upon before we go to our next break. Michigan beating Alabama 19-13. Significant because this is Big Ten over SEC. Michigan's defense in this game was tremendous if you watched it yesterday. Coach Jerome really has shown me that he may indeed be the best replacement for Harbaugh. First Ohio State, now Alabama. Great game plans in both of those affairs by Michigan. And if you're an Alabama fan, what do you say about DeBoer? To send him back to Washington, perhaps?
All I'm saying is I'm glad that I don't have to hear Alabama fans whine anymore. The Kirk Herbstreits of the world, the media. Oh, how could you let Alabama out? They were one of the best 12 teams. SMU didn't deserve to get in. Well, neither did Alabama. You lost to Vanderbilt. You got blown out by a horrible Oklahoma team, and now you lose to Michigan. So I'm so glad that rhetoric can be over. Good for Michigan, whatever.
Yeah. Illinois defeated South Carolina 21 to 17, and Big Ten over SEC again. Missouri edged out Iowa 27-24. That's SEC over Big Ten. And this one I wanted to mention, Brigham Young did a job on Colorado, 36-14. So much for Coach Prime, Neon Dion. He was totally outcoached in this game, in my opinion. Whatever you want to be called, but Neon Dion, Coach Sanders, but I say stick to commercials, Coach.
I agree, Bruce.
We'll
and listen, Colorado, man, I get it. They were a horrible program. Dion got the recruits, brought them to the spotlight, but they don't have any success to show for that, Bruce. And I think that whole Colorado Dion thing was so severely overhyped, and they have no success to show for it.
A little bit more on the Bulls when we come back. Bonus time with Drennan, Big Play Sports Network. I love you, Menor Nissan. Bruce Drennan here for my good friends at Menor Nissan. And I'm doing this commercial for Menor Nissan from down here in Marathon, Florida, where my wife and I are in the Florida Keys. And we took our Mentor Nissan Rogue down here. And I just can't tell you what a fabulous ride it was. Smooth as could be and just tremendous on gas. Love it. And you will too. So check out the new 2025 Rogues and Rhinos and the Kicks and everything else at Menor Nissan. And now especially being incorporated with Infinity of Beechwood and Akron. Pre-owned, top used cars, can't beat it. The Superior Credit Program, helpful finance team will help you every step of the way. Of course, Menor Nissan, third generation, family owned and operated company focusing on the high level of customer care and service and a pillar in the local community. Visit MenorNissan.com. That is MentorNissan.com. You won't regret it. I love you, Menor Nissan. Once again, Happy New Year. Bruce Drennan here with Bonus Time with Drennan. Ryan Smith, my producer. A little bit more on the bowl games. Iowa State defeated Miami 42-41. Ryan was just talking going into the break about Alabama not deserving to be in the playoff. Well, you could say the same thing for Miami. And indeed, Ward, the quarterback, had decided not to play in the second half. He had a tremendous first half. But I don't blame him in a way because of the draft and money and a possible injury. So I get that, of course. But at the end of the game, Miami was losing by 1 point, and Ward doesn't come back in and try to win the game and save the day. But I got a kick out of Robert Griffin III, who had a brief stint with our Cleveland Browns, who said, and I quote, defending Ward, he said this, I quote, "Stop villainizing these student athletes." Student athletes, huh? All right. Following Iowa State's 42-41 Pop-Tarts Bowl victory, the concluding ceremonies were conducted by some nobody Pop-Tart representative reading from a script. And then he asks the game MVP, Iowa State quarterback Rocco Becht, what a great game, what his favorite Pop-Tart is. And so then Becht says, cinnamon or whatever. And then they try to pop up a cinnamon Pop-Tart and the mechanism malfunctions. So here's this nobody Pop-Tart spokesperson trying to ad lib, and he's going, we'll get it here in a minute. And finally the Pop-Tart pops up. The mechanism is, fixed. And this idiot is going, Pop-Tart, 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 Pop-Tart. Now, there's a much bigger point here. It's the new playoff system has dramatically reduced the importance of these non-playoff bowl games almost entirely. An example of Ward not playing in the second half of his game here. As I said earlier, most, and I say almost all of these bowl games are meaningless, except for the playoffs now, expanding to 12 teams. We've come to a point where if it wasn't for corporate sponsors like Pop-Tart, these games would not even be existing. Who cares? As I've said before, over and over, I'm not against the playoff system. Of course not. I didn't like the 2-team system. I did like the 4-team system. And I think we need to make adjustments with the 12-team system, that's for sure, as we talked about. But indeed, it's overall picture is what I'm talking about, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, the Pop-Tart Bowl was quite the sight to behold. I did watch the game. It was interesting, but I mean, that's the world we live in 2024. If anything, if these games, these bowls don't really matter, hell, make them goofy. I saw on Twitter, everybody was talking about the Pop-Tart Bowl, and at the end of the day, what matters, it's the ratings. And I think that had, out of the playoffs, of course, that was probably the most viewed non-playoff game.
It was a great game. It was a great game, even with Ward sitting out the second half. But here's some more research I did for this week's show. The winter transfer portal opened on December the 9th. Get this. 2,614 players have already entered the portal. That number of players has already surpassed last year's total of 2,611, and the number is going to grow, because all these players who are in the playoffs have 5 days after their last game to declare for the portal. Then there's the second transfer portal window that runs from April 16th to April 25th. More than 1,200 additional players entered that portal last year. So far, Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss has lured 15 transfer portal commits. Brian Kelly at LSU, 13. Texas Tech has 17. And it's all because of the NIL. Professional college football. And Robert Griffin III says, stop villainizing student athletes. Give me a break.
It is certainly a lot more athlete than it is student at this point. And now there's rumors coming out that a team is offering Quinn Ewers $6 million to transfer and forego the NFL draft. And it's just a chaotic world of college football we live in. And you're seeing great legacy coaches like Nick Saban, as we talked about, step away. Dabo Swinney refuses to embrace the new transfer portal era of college football. And now you're seeing Clemson slip out of what the success they were in the last 10 years. And it's just a totally new landscape, Bruce. And it's going to be the ones that are able to navigate it that are going to succeed.
We'll be back in a minute with more on the Cavaliers, some baseball announcements, bonus time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sport. Bonus time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Cavaliers, just an amazing story. The story of the year thus far in the NBA. 28-4 following, or 29-4, I beg your pardon, following the victory last night against the LA Lakers and LeBron. 122-110, not even close. Cavs beat them in every quarter. That's 8 in a row. Allen, 27 points and 14 rebounds. That's 27 points is season high for Allen. Mitchell, 26. Mobley, 20. Garland, 14. And 14 assists, by the way. And Strus back in action with 15 points, 3 boards, and 2 assists. Cavs had 18 three-pointers in this game. And indeed, the victory previously on the Friday against Denver, a high-scoring affair, 149-135, and the victory against Golden State and Curry and company, 113-93. Not even close. Not even close. Garland in that game, 25 points, 8 assists. Wade, 10 points, 13 rebounds. Cavaliers, and happy birthday, LeBron. Happy birthday.
The ageless wonder, 40 years old, drafted him as a kid at 18, plays his first game as a 40-year-old against his old team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. But Bruce, you spot on. They're not only winning, they are just blowing teams out. I mean, decimating them. And, you go back to early September. They get a good start. Oh, they can't keep this up. You're rolling in November. They're still hot. Oh, well, that's just a lucky start. December, they keep it rolling, and they're going to say the same thing throughout January. But now they're going on the West Coast. They're not only beating these West Coast teams, they're destroying them, and they are playing out of their mind. Best start in franchise history through 33 games, and the expectations right now are sky high for our Cleveland Cavaliers.
You see where LeBron says he could play another 5-7 years. He won't. He says he won't, but he could play another 5-7 years. I wouldn't put it past him. I think he probably could. He's in such he's in such tremendous physical shape. But interesting indeed. All right, we'll take another break. When we come back, I got a lot of baseball news for you. Bonus time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Great to have you with us. Bonus time with Drennan. It's our first show of 2025, and one of many we're going to be bringing you throughout the year. And from here in Florida, where I'm at right now in my condo in Marathon in the Florida Keys. But I'm actually going to be flying back to Cleveland tomorrow because our entire staff at Big Place, part of a big commercial that we're going to be putting together and shooting back at our studios that leads up into the Super Bowl and will air in the Super Bowl. And we're all excited about that, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's just incredible. I'm super excited for the production aspect of it. That'll be so cool. And to think that you're going to be seeing my mug on your television more often than not. I mean, that's just something I can check off my bucket list, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it.
Well, let's catch up with some baseball news, because since we were on the air with you last, the Guardians have made some moves. Josh Naylor, no longer a member of the Guardians, as he was traded away to Arizona in exchange for Ciccone, a pitcher, starting pitcher, right-hander, can be used as a starter or reliever, and also the competitive balance round B draft pick, which is more significant than what you might realize. I thought Naylor showed a lot of class in writing the letter thanking you, the fans, as he did in departing. And then what the Guardians did, they turned around a couple of days later and they signed old pal, free agent, first baseman Carlos Santana, who will rotate at first base between DH and playing. And I think what they're doing there is hoping to get 20 homers out of him, maybe 70 or more RBIs, which is exactly what he did last year. He hit 238 with 23 round trippers and 71 RBIs, 26 doubles. Interesting moves indeed. The money that Jimenez was going to make, they turned around and they gave the Carlos Santana. They might have overpaid for him, really.
Yeah, I think they definitely overpaid for him. Time is a flat circle. Of course, he manages to come back to Cleveland. I mean, it's like it was written in the stars, Bruce. And you never like to see a fan favorite like Josh Naylor go. But at the end of the day, we know just like every major sport, it's all business. And at the end of the day, I mean, it was postseason production that they were looking for, and they didn't get that out of Josh Naylor really in the slightest.
Yeah, and I don't think they're necessarily done. I think the bullpen is very, very strong. They may indeed still add another arm. We shall see. Getting Luis, that was a big move from Pittsburgh, because he figures to be in the starting rotation. The sooner we can get Bieber back, the better. I loved that move, as you know. But there you have the latest with the Guardians. Now, Corbin Burns has since signed a contract as he goes to Arizona, $35 million a year, not chump change there, that's for sure. Alex Bregman is still available. Corbin Burns signs his contract, no longer on the market. Christian Walker, no longer on the market. He signed with Houston. Alonso is still on the market, and I'm curious whether the Mets will really try to keep him. And I don't think the Yankees will be hurt with the loss of Soto at all now that he's gone to the Mets, because they've replaced him with a trade for Bellinger and also adding Paul Goldschmidt. But as far as the Mets go, if they don't replace, they've certainly replaced Alonso's numbers with Soto's numbers, but that's robbing Peter to pay Paul. In order to improve the offense, I think they need to bring Alonso back. Your take?
Yeah, I agree absolutely, and it's interesting to see all these major market teams, willing to spend all this money. It's unfortunate that we can't, but we know that's just how it goes. You're looking at the Dodgers deferring over $1 billion to a handful of players. Obviously, they just re-signed Teoscar Hernandez, which we'll get to. So it'll be another tough season, and for the Guardians to keep competing, I mean, they're just going to have to keep playing chess, and we'll see if they can do what they did last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're saddened by the passing of Ricky Henderson, 65 years old, 10-time All-Star, leads Major League Baseball in stolen bases, led the major leagues in stolen bases 7 different times in his illustrious career. 2 World Series victories in 1989 with Oakland, and again in 1993 with the Toronto Blue Jays. 3,055 hits, 1,406 stolen bases, 2,295 runs scored, 873 extra base hits, 3,081 games played, 297 home runs. Played with Oakland in 1988, 89, and 90. They won 3 pennants in a row. They lost the World Series to the Dodgers in 88 in 5 games. They swept the San Francisco Giants in the Earthquake World Series in 1989. Was Will Clark and company, and then in 90 they were shocked, as the whole entire baseball world was, with the 4-game sweep at the hands of the Lou Piniella Cincinnati Reds. But that Oakland team, Henderson's such a major part of it, with Jose Canseco, Mark McGuire, Carney Lansford, Dave Henderson, Terry Steinbach, pitchers like Bob Welch and Dave Stewart, Dennis Eckersley. What a career, Ricky Henderson, arguably the greatest leadoff man of all time.
Yeah, I never got the opportunity to watch him play. It would have been amazing to see. And, when you think of baseball greats, I mean, Ricky Henderson's name pops to your mind pretty much as soon as you start that conversation. So gone too soon. But, I mean, a player like him, for all he did, I mean, never forgotten.
And I want to conclude this segment with a tribute to Greg Gumbel, legendary sportscaster who passed away as well just this last week. And I knew Greg. I interviewed Greg a couple of times. Like me, he's from Chicago originally, and truly the consummate professional, a true gentleman. I loved Greg both as a human being and as a pro's pro, and we mourn his passing. All right, back in a minute with the concluding segment. It's Ask Bruce time. Next, bonus time with Drennan, Big Play Sports Network. All right, time for the Ask Bruce segment here, bonus time with Drennan on the Big Play Sports Network. Before we get to the questions, Ryan, any New Year's resolutions or hopes for this upcoming 2025 campaign?
Oh, gosh, I'm sure I'm going to tell myself I'm going to be in the gym 5 days a week like I do every year. I'll go for about 3 months. I'll start to flame out, go 2 days a week, then 1 day a week, and then I will be sitting on my couch like a couch potato. No, but I want to stick to it this year. I want to get healthy. I want to get my mind healthy. Just the 2025 is hopefully the year of health, Bruce.
Well, I've given up on that, but I certainly would like to see the Guardians Cavs win a championship. Second one for the Cavs in my lifetime, and for most of our viewers. And just make the Browns respectable. Oh, God, how much is that to ask, please? All right, let's dive into the questions. Go ahead, Ryan.
Alrighty, first one's from Jack. Hey, Bruce, lay it on me. Do you think the Irish can do it? Do you think they have a shot of winning the national championship this year?
Yeah, I do. I really do. I think that especially with Beck out, although as Ryan pointed out earlier, they may be better off with the scrambling quarterback who can run a little bit more. Beck is not known for his running, but his pass efficiency is unbelievable. I think this is a real toss-up game that's going to come down to the end. But after that, I think Notre Dame is in a real good position. They will play, if they can get by Georgia, they will play Penn State. And let's face it, Penn State beating SMU in the cold conditions in Happy Valley, SMU wasn't accommodating. They weren't used to that at all. And then this victory over an overmatched Boise State team that should have never gotten a bye. But yeah, I think Notre Dame's chances are very, very good, particularly if they can get by this game tonight.
Alrighty, hey Bruce, after running all over Tennessee, do you still believe it's win against Oregon or Ryan Day is fired? from the Buckeyes?
That's a great question. You know, it depends on what happens in this game against Oregon, and thereafter. I think if Ryan, chime in here. Did this Tennessee game save Ryan Day's job? I'm not so sure that it did. It certainly hushed up a lot of critics, or at least the faithful have to back off for the time being. Although the loss to Michigan still stings. You saw all of those seats sold to Tennessee fans at the Shoe, but I still think if he gets blown out, I think he could still be in jeopardy. How about you?
I understand the Ohio State standard. Of course, losing to Michigan's unacceptable, and Ryan Day has yet to beat them. But at the end of the day, who are you going to replace him with? That's a question you have to ask. This isn't a time when you can just go get an elite college coach. Like, I understand that you're not satisfied with what Ryan Day has done so far, but at the end of the day, who are you going to go get? The only one, I mean, are you going to pull Marcus Freeman? No, he just got an extension with Notre Dame. And you think internally, who is there you're going to promote? Brian Hartline? No, Ohio State isn't a place where you learn to coach an elite program. You go other places, then you get that stature built up in that resume, and they hire you at Ohio State. I think right now for Ohio State, Ryan Day is their best option regardless. I understand it's a tough draw playing the number one team in the country right now, but and this is coming from a non-biased Buckeye fan point of view, I think Ryan Day still deserves to be their head coach.
How about bringing back Urban Meyer?
Yeah, hey, there you go.
Why not? Belichick went to North Carolina. I mean, it could happen. All right, fire away. Next one.
All right, we'll flip it over to the Guardians from Andy. Hey, Bruce, Happy New Year. Do you think retaining Shane Bieber along with Luis Ortiz is enough to bolster the Guardians' rotation, or would you like to see them acquire another starting pitcher before the hot stove season ends?
Well, that's why they got this Saccone, because he can use both as a starter and a reliever. We'll see how he fares in spring training when we get down to Goodyear. But I think you can never have enough starting pitching. You can never have enough pitching, period. We've seen this over and over again. How many times have I told you how many teams finish the season with the same five-man rotation as they come out of spring training with? Very, very rarely does that happen. So, no, I'd like to see us add another arm, because who knows when Bieber can come back? Is that June? Is it the All-Star break?
Alrighty, hey Bruce, this is from Akron 90s Gamer. Should we be concerned with the right side of the infield, especially in regards to offensive power?
Well, Brito was a hitter. There's no question that he has proven himself in the minors. Now, if he can hit major league pitching like he's hit minor league pitching, no, you don't have a concern with power. And Jimenez was not a power hitter anyway. But I'm more concerned with Brito's defense, if indeed he's going to be the guy that plays second base. And I believe as of right now, that's what their plans are, because offensively, he appears to be ready. Now, again, if you rotate with Manzardo and Carlos Santana at first, and I think the front office is counting on not only Manzardo, what he showed last year, but also in right field with Noel, and will he be the everyday right fielder? But I think both of them, they're hoping that both of those guys will continue to develop with their power numbers, which will alleviate for the loss of Josh Naylor.
Alrighty, sticking with the Guardians. Hey, Bruce, is it fair to expect the Guardians to make it back to the ALCS and view the season as a failure if they fail to do so?
No, because the division proved last year to be a lot stronger than everybody thought going in. Everybody was in agreement that the Central Division was the weakest division of baseball. There were three teams that went into the playoffs from the Central Division. And this year, everybody appears to be strong, with the exception of the Chicago White Sox. Minnesota's still going to be good and competitive. Obviously, both Kansas City and Detroit were in the playoffs a year ago, and Detroit is making moves, and they're talking about maybe even going after Bregman. So they're going to be strong with Skubal and company, and Kansas City made great strides after that plus 100 loss season the year before. No, I think it's going to be a very, very competitive division forthcoming.
All right, well, sorry to do this to you, Bruce, but we're flipping over to the Browns now. Nick says, hey, Bruce, what changes would you make to the Browns after Week 18 and the season wraps up?
Well, I told you before the trading deadline, I would have cleaned house. And I'm sorry. I know that Garrett and Batonio made these statements recently, and I believe that contributed to the restructuring of Watson's contract. But how much can you improve? I mean, I know that when we had Josh Cribbs on our show, he didn't think that the Browns were that far away, depending on that quarterback situation. Well, that's a big if, that quarterback situation. And I'm not so sure we do have the accompanying pieces. I love Njoku. I love Judy. That offensive line's getting older, and they seem to get injured a lot more now. So I think there's very serious questions about the Browns' future. And I just hope, indeed, that they can make some great signings in free agency this winter and draft very smartly, because they're going to need to in order to be competitive, especially in this division.
Alrighty, last one for you. Hey, Bruce, do you think Myles Garrett will be a Cleveland Brown next season?
Yes, I do. I think that the Browns would be very reluctant to trade him. I wouldn't be. But I think the fan base would be in an uproar over that, because obviously he and our punter are the best players on the team. How about that? All right, that's all the time we have for this version of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network. Hope you enjoyed the show. Listen, we want to wish all of you a very happy, prosperous, and safe 2025 as we have now entered into this next year. And Ryan, I will be seeing you in a short 24 hours. We'll be, of course, joining you for the cutting of this commercial. So see you then, partner. Everybody else, look forward to conducting the show with you next week. Until then, as always, and most importantly, you remember, I love you, Ohio, and I love you, Cleveland.